Emerson Pierce was 2 seconds away from losing it when his rented black Escalade skidded sideways into a snowbank on a mountain road somewhere in upstate Vermont. "This is absurd," he muttered, tapping the steering wheel. Snow pelted the windshield like 1,000 icy needles as the wipers squeaked uselessly. His driver had bailed halfway down the mountain due to dangerous road conditions, leaving Emerson to navigate the last few miles alone. He had flown in from Manhattan for a last-minute investor retreat that got canceled because half the attendees couldn't get through the storm. Now, thanks to the blizzard, he was stuck in a town where the only hotel was full and the only open road was buried under a foot of snow. He stepped out, coat flapping, and immediately regretted it. His Italian loafers sank into the snow, soaking through. That's when he spotted a weathered sign down the road, Valley Pine Family Lodge, 0.3 miles. He grabbed his overnight bag and trudged through the snow. He was freezing, cranky, and every bit the New York CEO who did not belong in the woods. By the time he pushed open the creaky wooden door of the lodge, the wind had turned brutal. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. And behind the front desk stood a woman who made him forget, for just a second, how cold he was. "Hi there," she said, tucking a strand of dark, messy hair behind her ear. "You look like you lost a fight with a snowstorm." "I did," he said, brushing snow off his coat. "Tell me you've got a room," she hesitated, glancing at the logbook. "We're technically closed for renovations, family only usually, but—" She looked him up and down. "You're soaked and it's brutal out. You can stay in one of the cabins." "We just finished fixing it up last week. I'll take it." "I'm Marlowe Vance," she said, coming around the desk and grabbing a key off a rustic wooden hook. "And you are Emerson Pierce." She stopped mid-step. "You're not that Emerson Pierce, are you?" He raised a brow. "Depends." "Is that a good or bad thing?" She laughed. "I read about you in a business magazine while waiting for my tires to get changed. CEO of Pierce Capital, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. One entrepreneur of the year, right?" He was used to people recognizing him. But something about the way she said it, half amused, half unimpressed, made him pause. "That's me," he said slowly. "Well, congratulations," she said, handing him the key. "Out here, that and $5 will get you a hot cocoa." He chuckled, a real one. That was new. She led the way out the back door and across a snow-covered path toward a small, cozy-looking cabin. It was warm inside, with plaid blankets and a stone fireplace already glowing. "I'll bring you fresh towels in a bit," she said, pausing at the door. "And dry socks. Your feet look like they're planning a mutiny." He watched her walk away, her laughter trailing behind her. He'd expected to be stuck in the middle of nowhere with nothing but spreadsheets and storm warnings. He hadn't expected her. The next morning, the storm had buried everything in white. The roads were cut off. Power was flickering in and out. Emerson dressed down for once jeans, a Henley, and boots Marlowe had left outside his door. Down at the main lodge, she was shoveling the porch steps herself. "You don't have staff for that?" he asked. "They're stuck in town. It's just me and my cousin's kid right now. You're running the whole place." "My parents retired. I took over last year. It's not fancy, but it's ours." He picked up the second shovel without asking. She blinked. "You're gonna help?" "I might be a billionaire, but I'm not afraid of snow." She gave him a look. "So you admit it, the billionaire part? You already knew. Still, it's different hearing it from the source." They shoveled together, and something about it felt weirdly natural. Like he wasn't Emerson Pierce, high-powered CEO. He was just a guy helping a woman clear snow. Later, when the power blinked out for real, Marlowe lit candles and made grilled cheese on a cast-iron skillet over the lodge's fireplace. Emerson stared at her like she was made of magic. "You don't panic," he said. "Grew up in this place. When the power went out, we made s'mores and played charades. Want to join?" He raised a brow. "You're joking." She pulled out a deck of cards instead. "Fine. Poker it is." And that's how he ended up sitting on a braided rug, eating marshmallows with a woman who didn't care about his net worth and beat him at cards twice in a row. She leaned back and looked at him as the fire crackled. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." He didn't know what was happening, but for the first time in years, Emerson wasn't thinking about meetings or mergers. He was thinking about the way her laugh filled the room and how her eyes crinkled when she smiled. That night, after she brought more wood to his cabin, he stopped her at the door. "Marlowe," she looked up at him. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, her hair a little wild. "Yeah. Why did you let me stay?" She hesitated. "You looked like you needed somewhere to land." Something in his chest tugged. "I still do," he said quietly. She didn't move, didn't run. "Then stay," she whispered. And he did. Emerson woke to the scent of something rich and spiced wafting through the cracks of the cabin door. He sat up slowly, the fire having died down to embers. Outside, the world was still buried in snow, but the sky had softened to a pale morning gray. He dressed quickly, pulling on the boots Marlowe had left for him, and followed the smell back to the lodge. Inside, the living room was already alive with warmth and movement. A boy, maybe 12, was crouched on the floor building a tower of dominoes near the hearth while Marlowe moved around the kitchen, stirring something on the stove with one hand and balancing a tin of nutmeg in the other. "You found the kitchen," she said without turning. "I followed the smell," he replied, stepping inside. "What is that?" "Mulled cider," she said, glancing at him over her shoulder. "And cinnamon oatmeal." "Don't get excited, it's not five-star dining, but it'll keep you warm." The boy looked up from his dominoes. "You're the guy who got stuck in the storm." "Guilty," Emerson said. "You must be the cousin's kid." "Liam," the boy said, brushing shaggy brown hair out of his eyes. "I'm on school break and Aunt Marlowe said I had to earn my keep. I took out the trash, twice." Marlowe shot him a look. "Once, and you dropped it halfway down the driveway." "I was testing gravity," Liam said with a grin. Emerson leaned against the counter and watched as Marlowe ladled oatmeal into mismatched ceramic bowls. "You run this place and babysit." "Babysit implies he listens to me," she said, handing him a bowl. "We usually shut down in January to do repairs, but the storm caught us mid-project. Most of the cabins don't even have heat yet." He took the bowl and gestured to the steaming cider she'd poured into a chipped mug. "You always make cider for stranded billionaires." "Only the ones who shovel the porch," she said, arching a brow. Liam looked up again. "Wait, he's a billionaire." Marlowe set her bowl down and sat beside him. "Don't get any ideas, he's not adopting you." Emerson laughed. "I think I'd have to pass a background check." Liam squinted at him. "You own like 100 companies or something?" "Not quite that many." Marlowe nudged Liam with her elbow. "Eat your breakfast and stop interrogating our guest." After they'd eaten, Marlowe disappeared into the back hallway, returning with a leather-bound notebook and a roll of blueprints. She spread them out across the long pine dining table. "Are those the lodge plans?" Emerson asked, finishing his cider. "More like dreams," she said, flipping open the notebook to reveal handwritten notes and sketches. "I've been trying to get a loan to expand the property. A few more cabins, maybe a greenhouse, but small town banks don't love lone women with seasonal businesses." He moved closer to study the pages. Her handwriting was neat but bold, and the sketches showed surprising detail. "You designed these yourself?" "Yeah. I took some architecture classes after college. Nothing formal, but I love the process." He scanned a page with a detailed drawing of a glass-roofed conservatory tucked into a grove of birches. "This would be stunning in winter." She gave a small laugh. "That was the idea. A place people would want to come to even during the coldest months. But people around here don't invest in big ideas, they invest in what's safe." He leaned against the table, arms crossed. "You ever pitch it outside Vermont?" "I sent a few packets out last year. Got one polite rejection and 2 companies that ghosted me. Send me the packet." She blinked. "Why? Because if you're going to build this place, you'll need more than good intentions and hot cider." Her eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask for money." "I didn't offer it," he said calmly. "Not yet." She stared at him for a long time, then turned the notebook closed. "Let's get through the storm first." Later that afternoon, the wind picked up again and the trees groaned under the weight of new snow. Marlowe pulled Liam aside and whispered something to him before he grabbed his coat and ran toward the nearest cabin. Emerson raised an eyebrow. "Everything all right? There's a couple from the south cabin. They didn't bring winter clothes and ran out of matches." "I'm sending Liam to check on them." "I'll go," Emerson said, already reaching for his coat. "You don't have to, I want to," he said, looking at her. The snow was thick and unrelenting, but he trudged through it anyway, heart pounding harder than it should have. Not because of the cold, but because of her. Every time she looked at him, it was like she saw past the suits and headlines. And for reasons he couldn't explain, that felt more dangerous than any blizzard. He returned 20 minutes later, cheeks red and hair dusted in flakes. Marlowe met him at the door with a dry towel. "They're fine," he said, wiping snow from his face. "Grateful and very cold." "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. He met her gaze. "I know." That night, as the storm howled louder than before, Marlowe lit lanterns along the lodge hallway and hummed under her breath while she worked. Liam fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by comic books and a half-eaten cookie. Emerson stood near the window, sipping a second mug of cider. When Marlowe joined him, he didn't move. "It's strange," he said quietly. "I spend my life in glass towers and boardrooms, but this feels more real." She tucked her hands into her sweater sleeves. "It is real, just not always easy." He turned to her. "You ever think about leaving?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "But this place has history. My grandfather built it with his bare hands. My parents ran it for 30 years. It's not just a building, it's a part of who I am." He nodded slowly. "I know what that kind of legacy feels like." They stood in silence for a moment, the lanterns casting soft shadows along the walls. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something quieter stirred between them. When she finally turned away, she said without looking back, "Get some sleep, Emerson. Tomorrow's going to be colder." But he didn't sleep right away, not because of the wind, but because the woman who had let him in from the storm was slowly rewriting everything he thought he knew about warmth. The storm finally broke overnight, leaving behind a landscape draped in pristine white. Snow clung to every surface: the porch railings, the sloped roof lines, even the tops of the firewood stacks. In the early morning hush, the world looked untouched, as if the chaos of the past few days had never existed. Emerson stood at the edge of the main lodge's back deck, phone pressed to his ear, trying for the third time to get a signal. His breath fogged in front of him, the cold biting at his jawline. Still nothing. The cell towers were clearly down for miles. Marlowe emerged from the side door, tugging on a pair of knit gloves, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Anything? No service. It's like the storm wiped us off the map." She joined him at the railing, her steps softer than the snow beneath them. "I called the county office from the landline. They said the main road won't be cleared until tomorrow. Chainsaws are going out to cut through the tree blockages. So we're officially stranded another day." She tilted her head toward him. "You in a hurry to leave?" He hesitated, then lowered the phone. "I'm expected at a board strategy meeting in 2 days. But no, I'm not rushing out of here." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked back toward the cabins. "Liam's aunt is snowshoeing up from the next property. She'll take him back with her for the night. I figured he could use some electricity and Wi-Fi, and maybe a break from playing 20 questions with you." Emerson laughed under his breath. "He's got a sharper eye than most of my analysts." Marlowe gave a brief smile but didn't meet his gaze. "Something's shifted," he said, watching her carefully. She looked out over the trees. "I found the article this morning, the one about the biotech acquisition you finalized last month." His jaw tightened. "I didn't think there'd be internet." "There isn't," she said. "But I had an offline download of the business journal on my laptop. It popped up while I was looking for a recipe. And you paid $70 million for a company and laid off half its staff within a week." He folded his arms. They were hemorrhaging cash. "It wasn't personal. I'm sure it wasn't to you." Her words weren't angry, but they carried weight, and they stung in a way he hadn't anticipated. I didn't come here to defend my decisions, he said after a pause. I didn't ask you to. She turned to go, but he stopped her with a question that had been burning in his chest since the night before. Why do you keep putting up walls the second I get close? She turned fully, her brows knitting together. Because I've seen what happens when someone like you walks into a place like this. You don't stay. You get what you came for, and then you vanish back to your high-rise, your drivers, your boardrooms. I didn't come here for anything, he said firmly. I got stuck in a storm. And now what? She asked. You invest in my lodge, sweep in with a checkbook, and turn Valley Pine into some luxury resort, he shook his head. I didn't offer you anything yet, but if I did, it wouldn't be to change what you've built. It would be to help you expand it the way you want. She was quiet for a long beat, then her voice dropped. I can't afford to believe in things that vanish the moment the snow melts. He opened his mouth, but she stepped back and disappeared inside the lodge. By late afternoon, the sun broke through, casting sharp light across the snowbanks. Emerson spent the time hauling logs from the shed to the main lodge, keeping his hands busy, trying to shake the tension from his chest. When night fell, he found himself back in the cabin, pacing. He hadn't felt this restless since the first year he launched Pierce Capital. But this was different. This wasn't about losing control of a deal. It was about a woman who challenged every version of himself he thought he understood. He left the cabin just after dusk, crossing the path to the lodge. Inside, the main room was lit by oil lanterns and the flicker of the fire. Marlowe sat on the floor near the hearth, a thick book spread open on her lap. She didn't look up when he entered. He crossed the room slowly. I owe you an apology. She closed the book but didn't speak. I've spent years building a life where nothing touches me. I came here by accident and suddenly everything feels different. I don't know how to navigate that. Her expression softened, but her voice remained steady. You don't have to navigate anything. You'll leave when the road's clear. And I'll stay. He sat beside her, close but not touching. What if I didn't want to leave? She turned her head. Don't say things you don't mean. I've never said anything more honestly. She stared at him, unsure whether to believe him. So he added, I haven't thought about the next merger or the next quarter since I got here. All I've thought about is the way you make me feel like I could be someone else, someone better. She lowered her gaze. Her voice was quieter now. I don't need saving. I'm not looking for a white knight. I know, he said. I think it's me who needs saving. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached over and handed him the book she had been reading. A pressed maple leaf marked the page. He took it wordlessly. I used to read that to Liam when he was younger, she said. It's about a boy who builds a raft to escape a flood and ends up finding something he didn't know he'd lost. He looked down at the passage, then back at her. What did he find? Hope. They sat in silence, the fire snapping between them. He didn't reach for her. He didn't press. But something settled in the space between them, something fragile and real. Outside, the wind was still, the world holding its breath. And for Emerson, the storm had finally cleared in more ways than one. The plows arrived just after sunrise, carving wide, wet paths through the snow-packed road that snaked down the mountain. The rumble of machinery echoed through the trees like a distant drumbeat, marking the end of isolation. Marlowe stood on the porch of the lodge, arms folded tightly, her breath forming short clouds in the crisp morning air. She didn't turn when Emerson joined her. They'll reach the main road by noon, she said quietly. Should be clear all the way to the interstate by evening. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked out at the workers in neon vests, their heavy boots crunching through snowbanks. Life was resuming. The storm was over. And with it, the strange, suspended world they'd lived in for the past few days. I have a jet waiting at the Burlington airstrip, he said. They'll hold it until tomorrow, but if I don't leave today, I'll miss the quarterly review. She nodded but didn't look at him. Liam's aunt left a few hours ago, said to tell you thanks for teaching him how to split kindling without losing a finger. Emerson smiled faintly. He's got good instincts. He just needs someone to believe he's capable. That made her glance at him. He's not the only one, he turned toward her slowly. You're not going to let me help, are you? She hesitated. I've been thinking about it, the expansion, the greenhouse, the cabins. I've had this dream for years, but I never imagined someone like you would walk into it. I didn't walk in, he said. I crashed, remember? That drew a small laugh from her, but it faded quickly. He took a step closer. Let me invest. Not because I think you need rescuing, but because I believe in what this place could be. What you could build here. She studied his face. What happens when your shareholders ask why Pierce Capital is funding a lodge in the middle of nowhere? I won't take it through the company. I'll fund it personally, quietly, her brow furrowed. Why? Because I don't want this to be about business, I want it to be about choosing something that matters. She looked away again, her posture rigid. You're leaving? Yes, he said softly. But I don't want to. Then don't, he blinked. I've watched you these past few days, she said. You're not the man in those business articles, you're different when you're here. Slower, softer, he reached for her hand. You make me different. She let him take it, but her voice was careful. This isn't a vacation romance, Emerson. I don't want to be a story you tell your friends about the time you met a girl in the woods. I'm not leaving you behind, Marlowe. I'm leaving because I have obligations, but I'll come back. She stared at him, uncertain. I'll fly in next week. Or sooner if the roads hold. I'll bring contracts for the expansion. I'll bring plans. And if you'll let me, I'll bring everything that comes with choosing you. She swallowed hard. What if I say yes and you change your mind? I won't. She searched his eyes for something solid, something she could hold on to. Whatever she found there, it was enough. Then you'd better come back, she said. He leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead. I will. By early afternoon, the last of the snow was cleared and a Range Rover with New York plates pulled up to the front of the lodge. Emerson tossed his bag in the back, but lingered by the porch steps. She stood barefoot in the open doorway, wearing a flannel shirt knotted at her waist, the hem brushing the tops of her jeans. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes were warm. He walked back to her, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her with a slow, deliberate tenderness that made her knees unsteady. When I come back, he said, I want you to show me where the greenhouse will go. And what if I've already started building it? Then I'll help you finish it. The driver coughed politely from the car. Emerson let go of her slowly, then turned and walked down the steps, the sound of his boots crunching in the snow. He climbed into the back seat and didn't look back until they were halfway down the road. Marlowe was still standing there, wind tugging at her hair, one hand raised like she was holding onto something invisible. He pressed his hand against the glass for a moment, then faced forward. 3 weeks passed. Marlowe didn't hear from him. Not in the way she expected. No calls, no emails, no surprise helicopters landing on the field behind the lodge. Instead, a package arrived by courier one morning. Inside, a hand-drawn sketch of her greenhouse, annotated with structural notes and material suggestions in a confident, neat script. Folded inside the plans was a letter. I couldn't stop thinking about the maple grove. I hired a team in Vermont to start clearing the site. They'll break ground next week. If you still want this, I'll be there Tuesday. And if you don't, stop them before they pour the foundation. Either way, I meant what I said. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. She stared at the paper for a long time. Then she looked out the window where the grove stood untouched, sunlight filtering through branches heavy with snowmelt. Tuesday came, so did he. He stepped out of a black SUV wearing jeans and a utility jacket, a rolled blueprint under one arm and a bouquet of wildflowers in the other. She opened the lodge door before he knocked. You're late, she said. I got lost in the snow again, he replied. But I brought flowers. And a team of contractors. She took the bouquet and stepped aside. Then I guess you'd better come in. That night the lodge glowed with golden light. The fire crackled, the scent of cedar filling the air. Emerson sat beside Marlowe on the porch swing, one arm around her shoulders, their fingers laced together. What if this doesn't work? She asked quietly. Then we rebuild, he said. Together. She rested her head against his chest, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel uncertain. It felt like home. The greenhouse was nearly finished by the time the first crocuses broke through the snow-damp earth. Sunlight filtered through the glass panes in soft gold, warming the wooden floor planks that had been laid only 2 days earlier. Outside, birds had returned to the trees with cautious song, and the last of the winter ice melted from the eaves of the lodge. Emerson stood inside the greenhouse, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, palms braced on the edge of a work table littered with seed packets and soil-streaked notes. He was studying the irrigation schematic Marlowe had designed, nodding slowly as he traced one of the lines with his finger. "You're going to wear a hole in that paper," Marlowe said from the doorway, her jeans dusted in sawdust and her braids slipping loose over one shoulder. He turned, smiling when he saw her. "It's efficient." "You thought of everything. You're surprised?" "Not in the least," he said, crossing to her, "but I am impressed." She stepped inside, the glass warming her skin instantly. "I found an heirloom seed supplier in Burlington. They're sending the first order next week." "You're really doing it," he said softly. "We're doing it." He reached out, brushing a fleck of paint from her cheek. "You never needed me for this." "I didn't," she agreed, "but I wanted you here." His hand dropped slowly to her waist. "I never thought I'd want to stay anywhere," he said. "But this place, you've changed what home means." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "Are you sure?" "I resigned from the board this morning." Her breath caught. "You what?" "I held on to it because I thought it defined me. But I don't want 40-hour weeks in skyscrapers anymore. I want this. I want mornings with you and afternoons building something real, something with roots." She stared at him, stunned. "You left everything." "I kept the name," he said. "Pierce Capital can run without me. I appointed a new CEO. Someone I trust." She stepped closer, voice hushed. "You're not going back. I'm already where I belong." He pulled a small velvet box from the side pocket of his jacket and opened it between them. Inside was a delicate ring set with a single oval sapphire flanked by tiny mountain-shaped diamonds, something quiet and beautiful, something that felt like her. Her hand flew to her mouth. "I know it's fast," he said, "but I've never been more certain of anything. I love you, Marlowe Vance. I love your fire and your stubbornness, your heart and your dreams. I want to spend every season of my life watching you grow this place and growing with you." She didn't speak. Her eyes were wet. "I'll wait if you want me to. But I'm hoping you don't make me." She reached out, closing his fingers around the box. "I don't need time." He blinked. "You don't?" She shook her head, smiling through the tears. "I've never been so sure of anything." Then she kissed him. Right there in the half-finished greenhouse, with the scent of fresh soil and sawdust and paint in the air, she wrapped her arms around him and kissed him like spring itself had bloomed from the ground beneath them. Outside, the wind stirred the pine branches, but inside, the only thing moving was the two of them, tethered finally, completely. They married 6 weeks later in the meadow behind the lodge. The snow had long melted, replaced by wildflowers in every shade of violet and gold. Guests sat on benches built from reclaimed barn wood, and Liam, now sporting a bow tie and a camera, documented every moment with the seriousness of a seasoned photographer. Marlowe walked down the aisle barefoot, wearing a dress she made herself from raw silk and antique lace. Her hair was loose, curls falling down her back, a crown of tiny white blossoms woven into the strands. Emerson waited at the altar, wearing a gray vest and rolled sleeves, his eyes locked on her like she was the only thing that had ever made sense. They exchanged vows beneath an arch of pine and maple branches, and when they kissed, the whole valley seemed to hold its breath. After the ceremony, they danced beneath strings of twinkling lights hung between trees, guests sipping cider and toasting with laughter that rang deep into the night. Later, Emerson pulled Marlowe aside, leading her down the gravel path that wound past the cabins to the greenhouse. Inside, the tables had been cleared, replaced with a set table for two, lit by floating candles and petals scattered across the wood. He pulled out her chair, then sat across from her, his fingers laced with hers over the linen napkins. "This was the first place I knew I loved you," he said. "I wanted it to be the first place we celebrated." She leaned in, brushing her lips to his. "It's the first place I believed in forever." They stayed there long after the food cooled and the candles burned low, wrapped in each other's arms, the doors open to the night air. Autumn came, and the greenhouse bloomed with oranges and reds. Winter followed, and the lodge remained open, full of guests who came for the snow-covered cabins and the warmth of a fire tended by the woman who had once thought she'd be alone in her dream. Emerson spent his mornings fixing fences and hauling wood, his phone mostly forgotten, days measured not in meetings but in moments. And every night he came home to her, to the woman who had opened her door to a stranger in a storm and given him the one thing he never knew he needed. A place to belong, a love that would never melt away.